So just before I start tonight on the topic, I'd like to set the motivation. So we should feel very positive that we've made the effort to be here this evening, in these busy lives that we lead. And what we're doing tonight, of course, is training the mind and the heart to be calm and clear. Using this meditation, using the sitting and reflecting on the teachings, on the Dharma. And as the mind becomes more calm and clear, when those problems come up in this life that we lead, we're much more able to understand them and deal with them. And the solutions that we follow to solve those problems are going to be the best solutions for ourselves and for those around us. And when people come to us for help or for advice, if we have a calm, clear mind and heart, we're able to really help them instead of thinking, well, I'm not quite sure what to say or do, but here goes. And when you're able to help someone and you can see that it has been of great benefit for them, you check inside how it feels. It feels really good. And that's that mental happiness that we all yearn for. That stable, happy state of mind, calm, clear and contented. The enlightened mind. That's what we're training for tonight. And it's, of course, for our own happiness. And then we turn to help all those around us. And in this world today, perhaps as never before, there has never been so much suffering. So what we're doing tonight, of course, is of huge importance. And all those positive thoughts, all those kind words and generous actions become imprinted on our consciousness and mind, and when we move on to the next life, they travel with us, ensuring that not only is this life worthwhile and meaningful and happy, but future lives will be too. So it's very, very important, our own training session tonight. Okay, so I'm just going to, I'm Tibetan Buddhist, Gelug Tibetan Buddhist, and I really think a lot of the things I'm going to say, they may have different terminology, but I mean everything's the same really. Just to go back and just go over what we mean by a calm, clear, contented mind and heart. If you think of the mind as a clear blue sky, okay, and the nature of the mind is clear and knowing. That's our fundamental mind. And the things that disturb us, that make life so difficult, are like clouds that come across the clear blue sky of our mind, sometimes when we least expect them. And they obscure that beautiful blue sky, and we can't think clearly, and we don't behave in a rational, calm way when that happens. And so the idea, of course, to be happy, to be able to live a meaningful life, is to learn to recognise those clouds of anger and jealousy and pride, those clouds of greed, attachment, doubt, anxiety, loneliness, to recognise them when they begin to appear on the horizon, if you like, and to be able to head them off at the pass, use techniques and antidotes that to really weaken them and to prevent them from taking over the true nature of our mind. And in the end, if we keep on doing it, if we keep at it, practice makes perfect. In the end, they stop appearing. And on the way, it happens bit by bit. And it's such a relief sometimes to think that before you would have got really angry at someone, and all of a sudden, because you've been really paying attention and trying very hard to be calm, that anger no longer comes up. And that's just enough to encourage you to keep on practicing, to keep on working and training your mind. So a whole year ago practically I came here, and what I talked about was anger, which is one of those clouds, one of those defilements or delusions. And tonight I thought I'd have a go at greed or attachment or desire, whatever you want to call it. I thought I'd just talk a little weeny bit about anger first of all and then move on to the other. So, When our mind is clouded by anger, the value of everything and the worth of those people around us, the people that we're angry with, we seem to look at them and whatever they say and do, however we see them in a diminished way, a decreased way. They can't do a thing right when we're angry with someone. That's what anger does to us. Everything is diminished, decreased in value. Nothing about those people pleases us. They can't do anything when we're angry with them to satisfy us. Nothing they say is correct when we're angry with them. And when we look around us, everyone else who happens to be around, or the dog or the cat or wherever we are, everything appears negative, ugly and unpleasant. And that's the huge effect that anger has on us. Our mind becomes tight and narrow. And the causes and conditions of our anger seem very clear and surprisingly few in number. We're so sure who has caused the problem. We're so sure that what they have had to do and what they have to do to solve that problem, it becomes very clear to us in the heat of the moment. We feel quite powerful. And it's all their fault. So we feel so certain and so powerful and so right. And that's the effect that anger has on our mind. The good thing about anger is it's very easy to identify. You can feel it coming up. You can feel it's a physical feeling coming up inside you. I mean, it might even start with irritation, or it might be full-on sort of thing. And that's very good in a way, because if we really wish to control this anger, to eliminate it, to subdue it, as soon as we begin to feel it at the beginning, we can begin to work on it. Once it actually takes over our mind, it's really too late. And so be it. Every time that happens, we turn around and we determine again and again to employ that ability to watch the mind, to watch out, to try to be patient and calm, and next time it happens, to try and make a better fist of it. You know, there's no need to give in. We have to keep at it. We can actually, we can feel anger physically, and then, of course, when it's over, we can also feel it as the body relaxes. It seems to ebb away. So anger, in a way, is quite a good cloud to have, because you can actually sort of recognise it, you can feel it, and then you can deal with it. However, greed or attachment, or sometimes when I try and make myself look at it, I make myself say craving attachment, or desire, is also another cloud or another defilement. And it's much harder to identify. His Holiness says about attachment, it's like a friend that's peeping over your shoulder. You know, you sort of, it's just there. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, my guru, says it's like honey on a razor. It appears to be really pleasant, but underneath it can be incredibly destructive. It's very hard to recognise attachment or desire or greed. You know, that we seem to be able to explain to ourselves why we're feeling the way we do with that. And the difference between anger, when we decrease or diminish the worth of the people who are making us angry or whatever the object is, with attachment, what we do is exaggerate. We exaggerate the positive qualities of that person or that object or whatever it is. Again, our mind is clouded and distorts the object that we so desire. We build that object or that person into a wonderful fantasy, far above reality. And it's so pleasant, you know, it's quite easy to keep doing it. Our expectations soar high into the sky, and our possessiveness, our grasping mind, is almost overwhelming. So attachment is really a sneaky one, really, really sneaky. Instead of considering all the causes and conditions around our attraction to that person or that object, That is, looking at the big picture. Instead of standing back and thinking, whoa, I'm going in too fast here, it's quite seductive. What we do, our mind selects one part of those causes and conditions and builds it into a potent mix of strong emotions, future plans and pleasures. And what we do, of course, is ignore all the other aspects. It's not at all a balanced approach. And then, of course, as time goes on, we work very hard to make our fantasy work. As time goes on, our expectations are not fulfilled one way or the other, whether it's a car or a person or a job or whatever it is. Sooner or later, the bubble bursts. We feel betrayed and disappointed. And this forces us to face the fantasy that we've constructed. And disappointment is a wonderful thing. You know, I used to always work very hard not to be disappointed until I read a text and it said that disappointment brings us back to reality. It forces us to face things as they really are. And it's really like a signpost on the path to being enlightened, to being liberated of all those mistaken defilements. So there we are. Of course, when we realise that this wonderful fantasy that we've built up isn't actually as it seems, and we feel disappointed, of course all the other clouds come flooding in across the blue sky of our mind. First of all, there could be anger. We feel really angry. We might feel jealous. You know, if it's a relationship, we might feel jealous that it hasn't turned out the way we've worked so hard for it to resolve, whether it's with a child or a parent or with a partner. And then, of course, our mind is totally obscured. So why do we want to eliminate greed or attachment or desire? Well, because we suffer. We suffer from it. And it's a bit like long-term torture, really. Anger is really fierce and clear. But attachment, greed, desire is actually almost like a slow burn, and that's why we really need, and despite that, what it does to us, what it does to others is pretty dreadful too. So our mental suffering and our emotional pain can even make us physically sick if we let it go on for too long. So it's in our interests to be courageous and to face it. Of course, the mind of greed or attachment becomes habitual. This is the other danger, of course. The more we want, the more we must have, and we strive to satisfy ourselves. And this is similar to the mind of anger. The more we attempt to solve problems through anger, the easier it becomes to follow that mental pattern in this life and, of course, in future lives when we're faced with difficulties. So we need to look after ourselves and our mind in this life and be aware that those patterns that we lay down in this life follow us on if we're not very careful, if they're negative. Before I start to read Lama Zopa's wise thoughts on the defilements of desire, greed or attachment, I'd just like to clarify the following terms, okay? Sometimes people ask, what's the difference between love or attachment, love or, desire? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that sort of thing, perhaps. And as I see it, the difference between love and attachment or desire, when we love someone, whether it's a child or a dog or a parent or a partner, the most important thing is that they're happy, that we make them happy. And if we truly, truly love them, if that means that they leave us, or we have to do things and we're not acknowledged for them, we seem to be, it's just taken for granted, that's fine. If we really love them, we can just let that happen and keep on making them happy. Attachment is different. Attachment is love with conditions, of course, as I'm sure you all know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know really. But when we are attached to someone and love them, sure, we try very hard to make them happy, but in return, what do we expect? We expect them to do the right thing by us and to make us happy. So the conditions are there, the expectations are there, and the pressure is there. And it can be incredibly destructive. So that's just a little, in case we come across Lama Zopa Rinpoche talking about that sort of thing, just to bear that in mind. And the other thing is the self-cherishing mind, which is really just a translation for the ego. When we talk about the self-cherishing mind, that's the mind, of course, that puts ourselves above everyone else. And to a certain extent in the West, particularly, I think we're encouraged to look after number one. We're encouraged to put ourselves first and then think of others. And from a Buddhist point of view, again, that causes tremendous effort to be able to do that, and tremendous pain for ourselves and others in the long run. So the self-cherishing mind is the selfish mind, the ego. Okay, so that's me speaking gently. We'll get on to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. This is actually an interesting book because he talks about many topics, and of course the attached one is a bit like agony aunts. I'll read you very slowly a couple of letters that people have written in. They're very short. And then he gives them advice, and actually the advice is teaching. So just see how it goes, see if it's helpful. Okay, and it's called Attachment. How can I stop attachment? First one is from Jill in Amsterdam. Dear Lama Zopa, I have many attachments in my life that drain my energy more than they should. I worry about the people close to me more than they need me to worry about them. I often feel that I could be more effective as a person if I could break free and focus on developing skills and abilities that really matter. But I'm totally caught up in worrying about my friends and possessions. How can I make progress? So he says, Dear Jill, especially for us beginners, one of the most powerful ways to counteract attachment or desire to be accepted or loved, whatever it is to think of death and to think of impermanence. Think, I could die at any time. So too can the object of my attachment, the other person, die at any time. Death is one thing, but other changes can come about too. The object can change and become undesirable. Any day, any moment, this can happen. An accident could happen if we're very attached to our body, because the various things that we're attached to, of course, the most important thing we're attached to is our body. Okay, that's without even thinking about it. We put a lot of time into looking after our body. We have to keep it healthy, to keep it happy. And then often we're encouraged to embellish our body, which is okay, and then on and on and on it goes. I mean, at the moment with the Olympic Games, all those athletes have spent a lot of time training their bodies to be able to perform in a certain way. So we're very attached to our body, and of course when we pass away, when we die, it's very difficult for many people to leave it behind. So apart from being attached to relationships, to children, to partners or parents, our body is a huge attachment for us. The other things, of course, we can be attached to is our reputation, our wealth, and that we're encouraged to be like that, of course, in our society. And we can be attached to food or alcohol, drugs, and that's a very modern problem with the drug situation, that addiction with drugs, and that attachment, I guess, to physical pleasures. So she's really attached to her friends, and he's actually sort of saying, all that energy we put into it is to remember that could disappear at any time. It's almost like being on sort of on quicksand. He says, the body can change at any time. It can contract leprosy. It can get ill. Many things like that can happen. And he says one very effective practice to counteract this is think. Any day, any minute, the object of my attachment can become my enemy by doing something that my attachment doesn't like. And that's such a good one. You know, if we have the courage to think back over our lives of the people that we were very close to, often some of them we don't see anymore, we don't get on with, something's happened, you know, things have changed. All that energy, all that that we put into making sure that they're our very best friend or that we're very close to them, things change and they go. Or if we have children, you know, obviously it's very natural for to be very close to children when they're little, but they grow up and they fly the nest, and where are you left? You know, you have to get on with your life, and there's sort of, it seems almost like there's a big hole there until we readjust. So we need to prepare ourselves for these things by reminding ourselves of impermanence and, of course, of death. And he says, the person can say or do something that your self-cherishing mind, that ego, that I, doesn't want, this person that you love. For example, the person may come to like another person and lose interest in you. This can happen at any time. So he says, think, if I allow attachment to arise, this hooking in, this desire, it leaves a negative imprint on my mind, which makes attachment arise again and again and again. And that makes it more difficult to handle in the future. The more imprints that are left on my mind, the more attachment will arise strongly over and over again, causing many difficulties in the future. It's good to remember that this makes your life very uncontrolled if you let it. So that's his, with much love and prayers, Lama Zopa. That's his advice to Jill. So the first thing we can think about, of course, is impermanence. We don't like to, but death and impermanence, of course, go together. And he says, to finish off, remember, I could die at any moment. The object of my attachment can easily change into the object of my unease or my aversion. So that's our first letter from Jill. And I'm just going to read you another one. This is a bit longer, this one, and we'll probably leave it after that. And this, he's subtitled is Make Your Life Beneficial. And these are ways to counteract attachment, ways to come to terms with it and to work with it. So this is from Maria in Colombia. Dear Lama Zopa, I have a nice home and I love my husband very much. I think generally I'm happy, but sometimes I get depressed and worried that my life is going by and that I'm not doing more to make it meaningful. I see there's a lot of suffering in the world, but I don't know what I can do. I think perhaps I'm too attached to the comfort and beauty of my home and to my husband, especially to the sexual relationship that we have. When the environment around me has no beauty or pleasure in it, I'm not happy and I even become angry. I do not want to live for myself alone, but I'm also afraid of being without all those things that I like to have. I want to make my life more beneficial for others, but I think maybe these strong feelings of attachment and greed and desire sometimes make it difficult for me to think of others. Please tell me how I can live a better life. So this is quite a long one, so I'll just take my time with this one. Dear Maria, he says, if you're performing the actions of your daily life with the two following attitudes, you will become very close to liberation. And the first one is meditation on Dharma teachings. Okay, the stages to the path of liberation, the teachings on impermanence, karma, renunciation, compassion, and all that sort of thing. This can mean living your life with a wish to achieve liberation quickly, or at least to prepare your mind by leaving positive imprints on it every day. So that's the first thing. The second one, he says, cultivate a sincere heart. Do social service with compassion. In other words, work for others. And we're very fortunate in this country we live in. I mean, you can sort of go to work or you can have a comfortable life. There's something in the phone book, there's a volunteers register if you like, you can through this centre here, there's all sorts of things that we can do as volunteers to help others. And this is what he's saying, work for others. This means doing something for others from your heart. And I think it's important, I've found, that if we do something and we really get caught up in it and becomes incredibly stressful, we need to be able to pace ourselves so that what we're doing fits into our busy lives, we enjoy doing it, we are helping others, but we're not running ourselves ragged, It's important really to be kind and compassionate to yourself while you're helping others. And then, of course, you enjoy it, and it's easier to keep on doing it. So he says, even if you give only a little help, you still get real satisfaction, like you've done something meaningful and positive with your life. Then every day, every moment, every second, you're getting closer to liberation. If your life does not have these two things in them, the meditation on the stages to liberation, the Dharma teachings, and cultivating the sincere heart, working to help others with compassion, if your life doesn't have these two things, then no matter how much you meditate, you're only doing it for yourself. Your life becomes dark because everything is done with self-cherishing, desire, attachment, and clinging to this life. All of these are non-virtues. When you die, you don't have any positive thoughts, and you're not able to renounce life. You are looking for pleasure for yourself with attachment, with desire, and from this comes only pain. And of course these are the pains that when we are with, first of all, there is the pain of separation, where you can't stand to be away from a person to whom you're attached. Then each day your feelings become stronger until the attachment becomes almost unbearable. And then there's the pain of jealousy of others. And the third one, you have so many worries and fears, it becomes so much suffering. He says you have so many projections, so many anxieties and fears. If something changes or happens to the person to whom you're attached or you desire, and I mean this can be for a child too, of course, it needn't be romantic. For example, if he or she is no longer interested in you or leaves you for someone else, then you feel incredible pain. If it is as if a disaster of war has happened in your mind, he says. You are attacked by your own hallucinations, fears and so forth, and you harm yourself and the other person. Your life becomes a huge movie of violent negative karma. Then there's nothing to rejoice in and no virtue to dedicate. Your mind is very sad and dissatisfied. So he says with attachment or greed or desire, your life is totally wasted. You don't achieve anything meaningful and you die with regret because your life has no purpose, and then it seems to have just finished. When you die, you don't have any positive thoughts about all the good things you've done in life, all the people you've helped, and so you're not able to renounce life. You know, you can't sort of move on feeling satisfied and contented. You die with all the negative karmas or actions that you've collected every day of your life, every minute, every hour, every day, every year, because nothing has been purified. Not only that, but the negative karma has also increased and grown. So you're reborn in the lower realms. But then he goes on to say, you could have had a long life and happiness, the happiness of future lives, a peaceful mind in daily life, and your own ultimate happiness. You could have performed spiritual practice, meditation, purified negative actions or karma, and collected merit. Instead, you followed greed, you followed desire and attachment. Most people in the world do not know about this. They have no idea, and their whole life is spent living in pure attachment, in pure greed and desire, in sexual pleasure and everything else, and that's it. Physical pleasures. All suffering comes from living with greed or attachment. You can see how the world is suffering in this way. You can see how people who do not have any idea about this are suffering now and creating even more suffering in the future. If you don't apply the meditations, if you don't reflect on things, then even a small amount of desire or attachment or greed is so much suffering. When you think of people who are never involved in positive actions, offering service for others or having compassion, you can see how their entire life is filled with unease, is filled with suffering. Their life is wasted. Even their future is wasted. If they spend their lives pursuing only this life's happiness, such as being a famous singer, actor or a president, their lives are totally wasted without meaning, says Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Then he sort of underlines things and says, if you're not able to renounce life 100%, which means to renounce desire and greed and clinging to this life, and if you're not able to do social service, working for others, or practice the path to liberation, then your life has no meaning. It is empty and wasted. Not only that, it also becomes negative and creates future sufferings, one after the other. You have to experience them. They just keep on coming back to you. How much peace and happiness you experience depends on your attitude, and I'm sure we all know this. If you have attachment and greed, and your main goal is to obtain liberation for yourself alone, then you are creating negativity all the time, and you are not creating positive emotions like compassion and loving kindness. If your main goal is greed or desire, and clinging to this life and all its pleasures, so-called pleasures, and if other sentient beings are not important to you, then you are creating more negativity and a more unhappy life. However, if your Dharma practice is to benefit others, then you will have more peace and happiness, even if you've not completely renounced this life. If others are the most important thing in your life, and helping them is, then you will have happiness. If others come first in your heart, you will have so much peace and happiness and fewer emotional problems. And we can check this one out, the times that we do forget about the old ego, the old self-cherishing mind, and we do step forward to help someone, and it works, and we do help them. When we check inside how we feel, it feels really, really wonderful and warm and relaxed and good. And that's a Buddha mind, That's how we can be all the time if we just practice, keep on doing it, keep on training ourselves to do it. Your positive attainments and actions depend on how much you guard yourself from following negative thoughts and how much you keep a positive attitude. It all depends on how well you protect your mind from greed and thoughts of self-cherishing, of putting yourself first. And of course this doesn't mean making ourselves, sort of like a mat for everyone to walk on, but just to be aware that whatever we're feeling, the pain that we feel, the wonderful things that we feel, everyone is too. So we're really all the same. And just to sort of put ourselves on one side and move out to help others. There's a big difference between enjoying your life with the thought of benefiting others and enjoying things just for your own pleasure, just for yourself. And he says, even sex done with a wish to benefit merely the person you are with becomes a cause for future happiness. So this is the self-gratification thing, If you can look beyond that, it becomes a spiritual thing. These two attitudes, following the Dharma teachings and the good heart, make an unbelievably huge difference in your life. With them, the sun is shining. Without them, life is dark and obscured because of attachment, of greed and desire, and a negative attitude. And he finishes by saying, it is like the difference between the sky and the earth. And he says, love and prayers, Zopa. And then he says, remember, just to finish off, just in case we've forgotten, remember, I will think about impermanence, I will think about karma, and the path to liberation or enlightenment every day. Remember that. I will live my life, even enjoying what pleasure it brings, with the wish to benefit others. And then all my suffering comes from living with attachment, chasing desire, and following greed. So there we go. That's the points that he puts forward. I think it's pretty sort of heavy stuff in a way. I'd like to, if anyone would like to ask questions here, if there are any questions to ask, and then I thought we'd finish a little later on with another sort of a meditation, a guided meditation, Has anyone got any questions? It's a bit of a heavy one to ask, isn't it, this one? Sorry? Yes? According to the teachings and my own experience, I actually never even thought about anything spiritual until my life became quite difficult many years ago, and I became quite unhappy. And I agree. The good thing about suffering is, of course, that it makes it stop. It's a wake-up call, isn't it? What's going on here? Why aren't I happy anymore? Why have things gone wrong? What can I do about it? So I think suffering is a really, really good thing. I think the problem about greed and attachment and desire is that in this modern life we live, to a certain extent, we're encouraged to follow it. I don't know if people agree with that, but we're sort of encouraged to amass things, and up to a point we do need enough money to live well and to educate our children. And I mean, no one wants to live in the gutter. But there is a huge incentive to keep on accumulating, you know. And if we're a woman, we need to be more and more beautiful. If we're a young woman, we need to have success romantically. And I mean, if we're young, and through our work too now, thank goodness. And with men, you know, there are many things that they're supposed to do to show the world that they're successful. It's sort of like it can become like a never-ending, I don't know, sort of like a merry-go-round going round and round and round. So I think the suffering is good, but I think the important thing is to identify clearly what it is that's making us suffer, and that can be I've found that could be quite difficult when our minds are not calm and we can't actually sit down and think what's going on. You know, why am I feeling like this? What should I be doing about it? I don't know if that's answered your question. Any other questions? Mm.
I find it difficult to see the difference between loving the other person entirely for their sake, as well as loving yourself sufficiently. You mentioned like the danger of becoming a doormat. And also, I feel that sometimes it's not really beneficial to the other person if you just allow them to be however they want to be and just be loving. I don't know, can you comment on that?
I've been married twice with 2 divorces. I'm not sure I'm really good. I don't have a good curriculum vitae on that one. I mean, all I can do is sort of think about my own life, really. And I mean, as far as, and my children, really. I mean, there are times when you'd love to do things to make them happy, but it's obviously not the best thing to do for them. I think for adults it's probably a bit trickier, and I'm not sure that I ever really found out the right combination. But I think when you love someone, I mean, when I remember loving someone like that romantically, I did have expectations. If I did the right thing by them, you know, they were supposed to do the right thing by me. And when they didn't, you know, that's when the anger comes up, the jealousy and all that stuff. I think the only thing to do is to check inside and to see how you feel. When things are going well, you know, really, if you know that really calm, relaxed feeling. And when you really have to work very hard to make a relationship work, like sometimes you have to just check it out that you're not peddling like mad, you know, and if you stop peddling, the whole thing's going to go down the gurgler. There's obviously something wrong with that sort of a relationship. I don't know if that's an answer, Flavia, is it? I don't really feel that qualified to. But I mean, it's easy to talk about unconditional love, but I think it's a really difficult one to achieve. And the stronger our ego is, the more expectations we have. I think that makes it, we really have to work on that before we can give unconditional love. I think sometimes that I've seen unconditional love is with my mother, with my own children, with grandparents and younger children. But I think that's because they're not so close, you know, they don't have to deal with all the things that the parents deal with, so they can give unconditional love. And sometimes it's not very wise, some of the things that they do with their grandchildren. It's a tricky one. Has anyone got any other wonderful advice on this? You'd probably make a fortune if you... Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? Anyone who disagrees, that'd be good. No?
Could I ask another question?
You're a good value, yes.
You mentioned the anger issue.
Yep.
In your practice, what do you use as an antidote?
When I'm angry, when I feel anger coming up. Well, it depends on the situation and the person. But I find that if it's something that I'm not really in control with, I try to avoid meeting that person or that situation. I try to look ahead and think, now, I'm not sure how this is going to go, so I'm not going to actually even put my toe in the water if I don't feel very confident about it. I mean, I think if you get to know the other person, even someone who you don't like, I mean, or someone who you feel bullies you in the workplace or whatever, often if you get to know about their lives one way or the other, you sort of find out why they're behaving like that. I mean, they might have had a relationship breakup, or they might be having money problems, or they might be really ill and you don't know anything about it. And when someone tells you and you think, oh, you know, if only I'd known that, now I know why they're going on the way they do. I think if someone really is upsetting you, perhaps to find out as much as you can about them as to why they're behaving like that, without blaming, but just, you know, and sometimes that can, just that knowledge that they're going through suffering and pain, whatever it is, you can just drop all the yas and how dare they say that to me, and, you know, all this sort of thing, because you just feel, you poor thing, you know, you can just, I think the more you know about someone, the harder it is to be really angry with them. I don't know if anyone would agree with that.
And do you practice loving kindness spiritual-wise?
Do I practice, sorry?
In your practice as a Tibetan, do you use loving kindness meditation?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we do. I mean, you can do. I'm going to do something in a minute, a little sort of visualization thing, because Tibetan Buddhism is really big on visualization. But you can actually. When I went to live in Chenrezig, when I finished teaching, I left. I'd been divorced for many, many years, and I found all of a sudden when I was over there meditating, my ex-husband was coming up in my meditations, and I was really cross. And it was 20 years on. You know, I obviously hadn't dealt with it. He had no idea. He'd moved on, you know, I'd moved on, but still it was there. So I practiced that giving and taking, you know, where you imagine lifting off them in the form of black light. I mean, I knew enough about him to know what sort of a person he was and what upset him in life. So I visualised relieving him of all his problems and sending him loving kindness and compassion, just visualising it. And I kept it up for a while, and then I thought, you know, you idiot, you know, I mean, it really made me just drop. He had no idea. It just made me relax and think, you know, he did his best. It didn't work, you know, drop it and move on. It didn't happen immediately. But I went through his life as I knew. He'd had a pretty unhappy childhood. And the compassion sort of began a bit, you know, bit by bit by bit. So that's just an example with him. So, and patience is another thing. You know, sometimes if you're with people that there's all sorts of problems, you just really, all you can do is hack it, you know. I mean, sure we all know this, but not to put yourself in the firing line, really. If it's a situation that's going to be unpleasant and angry, try not to sort of, I suppose, be the object of it if you can. If it's a work situation or something like that, try not to sort of be the one who starts it off, even if it seems to be so unreasonable. And that's really being very kind to the other person, as I see it anyway. And patience is an amazing thing. Patience is certainly not being a kicking ball. Patience is just standing back and perhaps instead of leaping in and winning the point, you know, just standing back and letting them go on whatever they do at the, you know, sort of at the table, the lunch table where you're all having a coffee together, and just instead of leaping in and correcting them and that sort of thing, just stand back. And every time you do that, and it takes a bit of doing, every time you do that, you feel pleased with yourself. You know, I haven't made it go further, I haven't ignited it any further. I could have won it, I know I was right, I know they're wrong, but I haven't actually capitalised on it. I haven't sailed in and won the point. You know, it's really, that's compassion. That's really compassion for the other person. And you can do that if you know about them too. I think it's, if you can not go around asking people, but if you hear about people who anger you or who attack you or bully you and about their lives, you know, often they're really sad lives. And it's, of course you can't stand in front of them while they're being unpleasant and feel compassion for them. It's quite difficult. But make sure that you stand back and meditate on it, you know, in the quiet of wherever you do your meditation, or even sit on a bench in a park and just think through it. And it's a sort of a gradual build-up, I've found. And I'm still building it up. I'm not there yet. But it gradually builds up the ability not to react all the time. Okay, so it's 8:45. I might just quickly do a little 3-minute visualisation meditation, and then I think you'll probably have about 5 minutes we can do it for. Okay, now I'll just be guiding you through, and if you wish to you can take part or whatever, see how you feel. So just as we're meditating, just check the back and the eyes, a nice straight back, and the eyes really lightly closed. Okay, now what I want you to do is it's going to be based on our breathing in and out, I guess through the nostrils. If you can't, you'll have to do it through your mouth, but it's best through the nostrils. I want you to breathe in, and as you breathe in naturally but quite deeply, just visualise all the blessings coming from the Buddha into you, in through your nostrils, in the form of white light. So you're just breathing in really calmly but deeply. Just breathe in and visualise that white light, those blessings, that loving kindness and compassion from the Buddha coming in and filling your body. Breathing in. Now when you're ready, I want you to breathe out again and really breathe out. And what you're breathing out is black smoke. Breathe out that black smoke. And the first sort of, we're breathing out all our tension, all our anxiety, all those clouds of anger and jealousy and greed. Breathe it out in the form of black smoke. Now watch it go up into space and disappear. And breathing in again, breathe in deeply but calmly, the white light, the blessings from the Buddha. And this time we're breathing in freedom from pain, good health, ease, mental relaxation. Breathe that in. That's what he's sending you, filling your body with that beautiful white light. And then when you're ready, breathing out again quite deeply, and visualise breathing out in the form of black smoke. Any physical aches and pains, tension, headaches, migraines, any medical condition you've got, breathe that out and watch it. It goes up into the air, into space and disappears. And next time when we're ready, breathing in deeply, imagine that white light coming in, the blessings of loving kindness and compassion from the Buddha, breathing in, filling your body again with that beautiful white light. And this time when we breathe out, we're breathing out in the form of black smoke, all those rigid ideas, all those set reactions that we've built up over the years, a sort of certain person, that breathe out all those set ideas and the fears of change, our little defence system. Breathe that out into the atmosphere in the form of black smoke. Up it goes into space and disappears. And then for the last time, we breathe in the white light, the blessings, the loving kindness and compassion from the Buddha into our body, breathing it in, filling our body with it. And we breathe out in the form of thick black smoke, all those unresolved situations of the past or ongoing that are unresolved, negative, unpleasant, whatever they are. Breathe them out. Now there they go, thick black smoke into the air, into the atmosphere, and disappear into space. You've let go of them. You've stepped back from them. You're free of them. And then we finally finish by just breathing in and out for a few minutes, just breathing in the white light, those blessings from the Buddha, and just breathe out anything in the form of thick black smoke that you think prevents you from being happy, just in and out a few times. Focus on that, the blessings, filling your body. So I'm just going to finish by a very, very brief dedication. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may all our Lamas live long and healthy lives, helping us, guiding us, teaching us to achieve that calm, clear, contented mind and heart, that enlightened mind. so that we can turn to help all those around us who are suffering. Thank you.